I've seen huge success with small to medium-sized businesses who are keen to just focus on one core part of their business, run ads targeting just that, and you can get great results instead of trying to spread themselves too thin over all the services that they offer, and then they're competing against huge businesses that it's overwhelming and they don't get any cut through. Great opportunity in the market, and put a little bit more money behind it. You're first on Google now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Kate. Kate, why don't you introduce yourself and give us the TLDR on kind of who you are and how you got to be here in this room talking to me.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Kate Martin. I'm the founder of Let's Market, which is a digital marketing agency that helps small businesses to get more sales, more leads and more growth. I started off this journey originally from working in the public sector. So I was working for local councils, regional economic development agencies, and I was bored out of my mind working for these companies that decisions take so long to make.
Right.
And I could see, especially when I was working in the regional economic development agency, there was a lot of people and small businesses that needed help. And we were kind of skirting around helping them, but there wasn't really any direct help that they really needed, especially in the digital marketing space. So this was kind of going on in COVID. I could see there was a lot of businesses that knew what digital marketing was. There was a few kind of effects of it taking flight.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the budget to work with the large-scale digital marketing agencies. They might have, $10,000, $20,000 a year to spend on marketing, but not 50, 100.
Yeah, right.
And there was this huge opportunity in the market for some small businesses to pop up, like mine, and help them. Give them those tools that they need to grow and meet the space that they want to. And so after a couple of years of figuring, should I jump out, start my own thing? Should I just keep doing the normal career path that all my friends and family were on?
Yeah.
I got the kick up the butt to be just go, give it a go. It was work going from one job and starting the private sector, absolutely hating it.
Oh, okay.
And meeting a boy at the time who he had run his own business and he was like, it's not that hard.
Nice. That's cool. So you had you believed you could do it because he kind of
he was
hey,
a huge kind of help in saying it's not it's obviously a huge step, and I was very fortunate to have someone who was willing to kind of guide me in the sense of there's a whole lot in the background that you need to do to set up a business.
Totally.
But in reality, when you get down to the nuts and bolts, especially in the digital marketing space, all I needed was a laptop and an accountant. Yeah. And even then, I don't think you can use Henry or, those cheap things like that. And,
True.
And it's a lot of trial and error starting your own business. Totally. Especially when your first business. I'm hoping it will get easier and easier as you go when you start doing businesses, but it's what?
I mean, usually the challenges get larger and the stakes get higher. But yes, I mean, you learn a lot from trial and error, like you mentioned. So how long have you been running?
So I started in 2023.
Okay, cool. So, at the beginning of 2023?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you're at the 2 year.
Yeah, I'm reaching the top of the bell curve. It's meant to start getting easier. That's what I've been told.
2 years is sucky.
Yeah.
First 2 years sucks. And you feel like you're getting now being 2 years in, you do feel like you kind of got a bit of a rhythm, you got a bit of a bit in market a little bit longer. You kind of feel like you got that stability coming.
Yeah. It took me a while to figure out who is my audience?
Yeah.
Who do I want to help? Do I want a niche? Do I not want to niche? Yeah. What kind of platforms do I want to be doing digital marketing on? Yeah. What size businesses? There's so many ways that you can kind of niche yourself down, and it's taken a long time to figure out kind of where I want to be and how broad or narrow I want to go. And that was just trial and error. I think I'm assuming a lot of businesses go through that they have an idea of who their audience is. Yeah. But it takes time to really be this is my audience. These are the people that.
Yeah. I think that often, you don't know your customer, even though you have a vague idea of your customer when you start. And then you kind of skirt around trying to find where it resonates most. And then eventually, you reach product market fit, which is very typical kind of wording in the startup and the kind of software lens. I guess with kind of traditional small to medium businesses, they already have, I guess, often a pathway laid out for them. If you're doing a recruitment business, for example, you may have worked at a recruitment business and then maybe your first client is even someone that you placed it when you were actually in a role. So I guess there are two differences between established kind of traditional SMEs that exist, and the path is kind of unknown. And then obviously, then if you go into the startup round, when you're innovating, you're going from what we call 0 to 1, then there's a massive difference because you might be making your own market, or you might be innovating on the business model. And then there's all these kind of, how do you actually properly find the customer that resonates? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's interesting when you're trying to find your niche. Did you pick a niche?
Well, it's interesting. Everyone I talk to is like, you need to like niche down as hard as you can. And I would say I'm horrible at, like, I'm so indecisive. It was overwhelming trying to pick a niche. So I would say I just help small businesses, and that's niche enough for me.
Okay.
Yeah, like small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
They've got a few staff. They know they need marketing, but they don't quite know what that looks like or where that's going.
Yeah, and they often, you're finding yourself attracted to businesses that are a bit lost in the marketing space and maybe don't feel like they're doing it well or have no idea what they're doing.
It's interesting. A lot of the companies I work with have been burnt by the bigger digital marketing agencies.
Okay.
So in that sense of, they had the tight budgets and the only option is to go with the large company, and the large digital marketing companies have got that, I guess, share power to like, this is what you need to do, this is the budget you need to spend.
Right.
And someone on a flash sales call really like upsells it, and they think, oh yeah, it's going to be amazing, we're going to get these great results, sign the contract, and then they hand it off to someone they've never spoken to, and they're not getting what they promised. The expectations are so different from what they're sold to the reality that they kind of come out of it being like, oh, why would I ever do digital marketing again? Like, it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's not what we were led to believe. Right. So like, a lot of them have been referred to me through different methods, and word of mouth has been great for my business, which is funny considering I work in digital marketing.
Yes.
But a lot of my businesses come through word of mouth, and I love word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth is strong.
Yeah, from businesses that had been burnt, and they're like, you should talk to Kate.
Right.
Because from having worked back at the Regional Economic Development Agency, understanding kind of what those small businesses need and having those early conversations on, like, they don't need all the wishy-washy. They just need it. Like, can you get us sales? Can you get us leads? Yeah. That's all they need, to be honest, when they're so small in New Zealand.
Totally. And what's your preferred platform at the moment for generating those leads, or what do you usually work with?
It depends. If it's a business that their customer knows exactly what they want, I'd say Google. Right. Google Ads has been fantastic. So within my business, I offer both organic digital marketing and paid social digital marketing. So organic is, creating content to go on social media platforms, whereas paid is you're putting money to be putting the content out there. And I've seen huge success with small to medium-sized businesses who are keen to just focus on one core part of their business, run ads targeting just that, and you can get great results instead of trying to spread themselves too thin over all the services that they offer, and then they're competing against huge businesses that it's overwhelming and they don't get any cut through.
Yeah.
So one example is I work with an engineering company, and one of the services they offer is called IH1, and there's probably only a handful of people in New Zealand that offer this service. No one was advertising for it.
Ah, cool. That's awesome.
Great opportunity in the market. You put a little bit more money behind it, you're first on Google now. Everyone that pops up on Google is seeing this. So we spent about $500 for the month just on this service that they're offering, and got $20,000 to $30,000 in return.
Right.
Which is great for a small business, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, going from zero to that.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of having those conversations with business owners and figuring out, okay, what do you do in the market that you want to push, or isn't being pushed as hard by your competitors, that we can get behind and kind of champion that.
And then organic, are you doing like video or blogs, or like what's
mainly video?
Yeah.
For small businesses, and a lot of them hate to hear this, but I can create the content for you, but it's going to be best coming from the business owners themselves or the employees. Yeah. Just because it's authentic, it's more real. People want to know what's going on behind the scenes, or how they got from creating the product and putting it all together to going to market. Or how the service behind the scenes goes from all the work to actually getting to the customer. And with the rise of AI and all this content, like, I love AI. I use it all the time in my business. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend that people use it as their sole thing for doing marketing, because everyone else is doing it. Yeah. and it's boring.
Yeah, I think the rise of like independent content creators has like been clearly amazing. I think it probably was a key driver for like Trump winning in the US was him going onto podcasts, like pretty significant kind of shift.
Yeah.
And I think it just demonstrates that people want to hear more authentic or organic content, and you don't need to necessarily rely on large networks. Although, you know, Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, they still own the algorithms and they still kind of to a degree own the distribution. But as long as your content resonates with people, then the algorithm will like it.
Yeah.
So that said, then, you know, creating content as a business owner from people in the business that are actually going to maybe answer the phone or have an engagement with a customer when the customer saw them in an ad is obviously going to drive home a little bit more in terms of kind of that resonance.
Yeah, I think another key thing is going back to Donald Trump, but I think a lot of people who I talk to who want to be bigger on social media or use digital marketing is this like idea of perfection.
Right.
But what I see the most business have success with, and even from my own experiences, it's quantity over quality.
Okay.
Which is obviously a very interesting take.
Yeah.
But from my past experience, I was petrified to video myself and talk to the camera and kind of, you know, this is my day in the life of a small business owner or whatever it is. It was cringy and I hated listening to my own voice. I thought I looked like,
I still haven't listened to any of my podcast episodes.
Yeah, because it's hard, right? You're like, gosh, who would want to listen to that? Yeah. But, you know, I started doing it, you know, maybe once a week. And then I was like, I'm kind of growing. I can feel it's happening. And I was like, right, I'm going to post 3 times a day for a month.
Oh my God.
That's a lot. And I got burnt out by the end of it.
Yeah.
But like seeing the change in myself from, you know, that beginning to the end of the month, like I can get on a camera now. It's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
As long as there is an idea that I'm going to talk to the camera about, like it just flows so much better. And I'm so proud of myself that I can actually even watch the video back.
Right.
And it's that fact of putting the quantity out there. It's not quantity in terms of AI rubbish.
Yeah.
It's quantity in terms of I'm trying and I'm practicing and I'm focused on making it better every single time.
Do you find it's easy to quantify your return on that 30 days, for example, or not?
No, it's not.
Can't.
And I think it's difficult. And that's where it becomes a bit tricky point between organic social media and paid social media or paid digital marketing.
Yeah.
Because you can't exactly measure, especially a dollar value on organic social media. You can see how many people you've reached or how many new followers you've got. Or if your video went viral, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into sales. So, for example, in my free time, I have a TikTok page just for fun.
Okay.
And I made this video here in Auckland about this cheesecake shop and it went relatively viral. It was my first viral video. Nothing to do with marketing.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not selling cheesecake. I'm not a cheesecake shop seller.
Yeah.
It was just for fun.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily going to impact their sales.
No.
Whereas there's still got to be in the back of your mind, what is the purpose of this content that I'm creating?
Yeah.
So it's trying to ride that fine line between, you know, you're putting organic stuff out there. I might not get the return on investment that I would see if I was running paid ads, promoting
directly to a call to action that you can measure.
Exactly. And when you're running those paid ads, it's usually to go to your website page to get a sign up or a purchase, which you can then track easily.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult. And it's from the marketing perspective, it's difficult for me to be like, how do I justify myself to my customers when they're like, overall businesses want more sales and more money coming in. They can see the value of the organic social media, but it's a long-term game. Whereas paid social media and paid digital marketing, it's quick return on investment. So getting them to see the value of both can be quite tricky, and getting them to be invested in the long term is it's a balancing act.
Do you usually sell in like joint, like paired programs? X% organic, X% paid, or?
No, I don't.
It's exclusive typically?
Yeah. Like it depends. Most of the business I work with, I think the long-term thing is they want sales. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what paid ads are, or I think it's a bit more of an investment because you're not only paying myself to set up the ads and run the ads and monitor the ads, you're also paying Meta or Google.
Yeah.
And that price can fluctuate and it's a bit harder to, it's a bit more murky. So a lot of businesses, especially when I first started out, were just looking for organic social media, kind of build their brand presence, which is interesting. And I'd have to say once the word recession started coming in a year or so ago, that's when this shift to let's not focus on organic, let's just run paid. Let's do paid hard.
Right.
So it's been very interesting, the shift. And now I'd say in the last kind of 3-ish months, I'm seeing a flip back to organic.
Interesting.
And the levers are kind of like, oh, we have a bit more money in the bank to be promoting a bit more organically.
Right.
So yeah, it's been interesting.
That is interesting. What's the typical size that you got of organization that you kind of find you're winning?
It's usually businesses that like they have enough staff to keep themselves busy, but they haven't hired an internal marketing person, if that makes sense. Or maybe the office manager has been dabbling, but that's not their job. They don't have a huge amount of experience doing digital marketing. And it's not like you need a degree to do digital marketing.
And then they find you, basically.
Yeah.
The person that's dabbling often finds you?
It's usually the boss has been kind of told by the receptionist or office person that, you know, they don't want to do it.
Oh, okay.
They're not enjoying it.
Right.
And that's kind of where I get called in, or the word of mouth happens, or like it's usually, the business owners have been recommended me, or which is quite interesting.
Yeah. Do you execute all the whole way through? Like, how have you, like, there's sales. And then there's execution. Like, how much do you execute? Yeah.
So I would say up until 3 months ago, it was just myself.
Right.
And I've just got a contractor on board to start helping me with kind of
editing,
more of the editing, graphics, bit of the copy as well.
Yeah, okay.
It was a tricky one when I started the business. Like, my dream is to obviously financially free.
Yeah.
Financial freedom is a huge thing.
Yeah.
But you're not really going to get that as a small business owner or a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah, right.
It would be very difficult.
Yeah, you haven't got much leverage on your own if you're selling essentially time.
Exactly. But the idea of working for myself, working anywhere in the country is huge for me, or overseas. So it's that fine line of, well, how big do I want to grow? Do I actually want to have staff under me? What does that look like? And kind of going down this path in the last year is kind of like, well, the other avenues of business that I want to explore as well, but still keeping my digital marketing. Yeah. So I've ended up getting a contractor on board. Was that happy medium of, I could outsource some of the work, but there's no ties of having an employee.
Totally. Yeah. So with that in mind then, what would success look like in 5 years?
Success would be, like, I'd love to still be running my digital marketing company.
However,
I would love to get away from the time equals money situation that I'm currently in.
Right.
Like, being in this business, the startup costs were pretty much zero. Yeah. Which was fantastic, especially if you don't know if you're going to sink or swim. Yeah. Am I going to enjoy being a business owner? I don't know. That's been fantastic.
Okay.
Whereas now I'm like, okay, I've been around the block a little bit to know what this looks like. I've spent enough time with business owners to realize what's a good business, what's not a great business, what are the opportunities. So kind of transitioning to more of a productized business model.
Yeah. Okay. Is that productized in digital marketing, or are you thinking even... Okay, so you're open to even kind of leveraging, I guess, the cash flow essentially from your digital marketing agency to then build potentially something that has more equity value.
Yes. Yeah.
Through a productized, scalable thing, and then use all your experience to then obviously do the distribution as well.
Yeah, which is exciting. Like, there's so many businesses I see out there, and I'm like, I've got so many good ideas of how you could.
There are so many small, medium enterprises, and I've talked about this quite a lot recently, and it's something I think about a lot as well. It's like there's so many small businesses in New Zealand that basically need to be sold because there's a bunch of people retiring, and those people didn't invest in like the business to actually grow it. And there's like almost it feels like an infinite amount of opportunity because there's so much you could do with a lot of these small businesses to make them way better and to actually give them some equity value, because at the moment they're often just kind of key man risk, key person risk, and they're like kind of not modernized, maybe not utilizing as much automation and kind of modern technology as they could to drive their costs down and improve their productivity. Yeah. So would you ever consider like buying a small business?
I've definitely thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely looked into it, and I've had conversations with people in my circle around like what their thoughts on that is, what that could look like. And a few people have come back to me and they're like, oh, why would you buy into a business when you can start it from scratch? But then obviously you've got the flip side of,
because you don't want to do that 2 years of eating glass.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. There's pros and cons.
It is pros and cons, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just know that like from a valuation and fundamental perspective, like businesses in New Zealand right now are just really cheap. Yeah. Like they should be trading at a lot higher multiples, but they don't because of those inherent issues that they hold, which is great for a potential buyer.
Yeah.
Especially is because there's not a lot of, it's actually the same with property. If you think about like large properties in Auckland and also businesses, there's no natural buyer.
Yeah.
Which because of the nature of it, okay, it's, low volume trading, which means, not many are transacting, which means that price discovery is naturally harder.
Yeah.
But over time, these multiples get lower because essentially there's no natural buyer, which is great.
It is good
for people that want to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
With it being a free market, I think that's fair. But I guess others are looking at, okay, well, how do I go around that? Because a lot of people enjoy the cash flow from their business.
Yes.
They don't necessarily want to see that disappear overnight. So we've been speaking to clients about how to do management buyouts and stuff like that. So they can actually stay in control, keep receiving the dividends for their retirement, but not actually get rid of the asset.
Yes. With
larger assets as well. I was talking to someone that was in the farming sector, and they were talking about how if they wait too long to do the succession plan and basically sell the business or the farm to their kids, then the kids get too old as well.
Yes.
And then there's no way to, and then their family ends up losing the asset because there wasn't strategic succession planning kind of taking place.
Yeah.
So I think there's a really great opportunity in New Zealand for young people if they wanted to get amongst it, basically pick up some ridiculously low valuation businesses that have, like you say, a lot of potential.
Yeah, what do you think it is? From my perspective, I see the potential or the opportunities to buy these businesses is huge, but it's kind of where do I even start? It's too hard. It's too much.
Yeah, I mean, first you basically do basic due diligence on them. So you go to the broker and you get their financials.
Yep.
And then you see where they're spending. And then you see, okay, well, what could I take out? I was looking at a motel.
Okay.
Random, but I was. Basically because it came with a 3-bedroom house. And I was like, hang on a minute. Maybe I could acquire this motel and live in the house and then employ people to take care of the motel because it had really high occupancy.
Okay.
High 80% occupancy.
In New Zealand?
Yep. And decent business. The gotcha was the lease was coming up.
Right.
So you didn't own the property, but there was really long leases, 25, 50, 100-year leases things for the business. So, but it was coming up, so there could be a price increase there. But I mean, if you took the salary that the owner was taking plus the profits, I mean, it was $250,000 a year opportunity.
Yeah.
And it was selling at the time for $600K, and you could definitely negotiate down, most likely.
Yeah.
So, you think about that, you could basically get your money back in kind of 2 to 3 years, which is really, really fast.
Yeah.
And then you obviously have all the assets that are tied to it, all the, you actually had all the structures, so you own those, you just didn't own the land. But yeah, but I just went through, I did some basic due diligence and, looked at everything they were spending on. I would cut that. Oh, I could automate this. All of these things were kind of happening.
Yeah.
And that's how I'd start and then work out how you would fund it. Would you be able to borrow, do a leverage buyout where you basically borrow against the business to do it. And then you just pay the loan back over a couple of years. It's pretty common, pretty good. I mean, far less risk, far less leverage than buying a home.
Yeah.
So the actual repayments, you're not actually having to worry about those in a sense. The business should be able to cover it with the profits, providing the business is in that sort of situation. And then, you work out, I had a guy, we do these financial well-being consultations where it's basically forecasting and budgeting and then kind of very light planning of what the future looks like. And he had been given pre-approval. He was saving 80% of his salary because he was flatting. He had a really good job, saving a load of money. And, the moment he would buy that house, he would go from being rich to break even, right? All of the money all of his excess cash flow was gone. Yeah. So he actually is now pursuing buying a small business instead of a house.
Yeah.
Because he's I can use that, buy a business, use that cash, and he wouldn't be using leverage. He'd just pay cash.
Yep.
Because he's already saved up a bunch.
Yeah.
And then he would use the cash flow as an opportunity to invest into other assets. Or if he wanted to go overseas and didn't want to work, he would be able to use the cash flow to, basically live.
That's pretty cool.
Which is great. And you're less encumbered because, any loan like that you would take on, you'd probably be looking at paying it off as quickly as possible, potentially in a couple of years. And you kind of got the actual business asset itself that you could use, if things didn't go too well, you could sell it. You might take a hit, but it'd probably not be too much of a hit, depending on obviously how big the business you're looking at buying is.
Yeah.
So I think a good practice is just to do basic due diligence by going to the broker, showing your interest in getting the data room.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't buy it or put in an offer or already interested in buying, like you learn a lot from going through those financials. So I think that's a good first step.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, or at least I was very much taught that the way to make wealth in New Zealand was to buy houses. Buy as many as you can kind of thing. But thinking about it, 40, 50 years ago, that was the opportunity. Is the opportunity now for our generation to buy businesses rather than houses?
Probably. I mean, the thing is, even if you go 50 years ago, and if people actually did the math and actually run some spreadsheets on it, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, yes, your asset is appreciated, but like, people don't really take into account the like maintenance, the interest that they pay, and all the expenses that come with it over the duration, because it's actually just not. It just, you feel like it is because you bought a house for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million.
Yeah.
But like, if you take into account all the costs, all the interest that you paid, the maintenance, the time the heat pump broke, the time the water cylinder broke, all of those expenses. Like, I think that by owning a property, like a residential property, gives you certainty of where you live. You don't have to worry about being kicked out and being displaced.
Yeah.
Like, a financial decision, especially like you say now, where the valuations are super stretched and the actual just sheer amount of leverage that you have to obtain. I mean, like, most first-time buyers are going in on a 10% deposit.
Yeah.
Like, in what other kind of realm could you borrow 10 to 1? You can't.
No. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I find it kind of funny. I don't find it that funny, but like, some of my favorite investors are like quotes. And Charlie Munger and Carl Icahn. Charlie Munger's like, cash flow is oxygen. Mm-hmm. So your free cash flow is like your life.
Yes.
And the Carl Icahn's positive free cash flow is happiness. So like, I'm a big believer that like, and especially after doing all these financial for well-being consultations where you see all these people that are earning great money, like some, households are earning $250,000, $300K a year, and they've got nothing left at the end of the month.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not happiness.
No.
That sucks.
Yeah.
And it's because, like, a load of people said that it was a really good idea to leverage up and buy property. And I mean, just do a spreadsheet. Like, if you just run a spreadsheet, like, it talks for itself. Like, I don't even need to advocate for it.
You make it sound so easy.
Maybe I should just like release a spreadsheet that shows it.
Yeah, maybe you should. I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, it frustrates me, and it frustrates me because like, consuming financial products in New Zealand is so expensive, and it does emanate from the banks. And this kind of whole property lie is kind of emanates from the banks as well, because they're the people that sell the mortgages that are creaming. We saw the other day, we found out that like $230 billion of depositors in New Zealand don't get interest on their cash, which banks basically use those deposits to basically lend people 2-year mortgages.
Yes.
So they're like not paying interest to their depositors in some cases, not all. Obviously, we all have accounts that accrue interest, but there's still like a $230 billion pile of capital that's not getting interest.
Yeah.
And that's like, if they were using, like, for example, we have a sweep account that yields 3.9% at the moment. Like, so if they were in that's like $9 billion a year.
Yeah.
But they are getting if they don't pay interest on deposits and then they lend, into sell mortgages, then they may be getting paid right now 5 to 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So they're making their full margin in that case.
Yeah.
So that's kind of criminal.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be allowed. It should be really, from a regulatory perspective, like pushed so that people know the best ways to accrue interest, and it should almost be like a default.
Mm.
Like, you should almost opt out of accruing the best interest rate rather than opting in.
Yeah.
I know that like in certain religions you can't receive interest.
Really?
Like in Islam you can't. Okay. So like Sharia law, you can't actually lend money. It's all about loans, so they don't agree with loans. I don't know any more detail than that they don't. But like in that case, they would turn it off. Like, I can't receive interest because of religious reasons.
Yeah.
And at least if everyone had like a better path for getting their best yield, even though it's a small amount, it still makes sense.
Better than nothing, right?
Totally.
Like, where do you see in New Zealand, like, how do you re-educate? How do you change that culture from what we currently are to what would be the best for the many?
I mean, I think you have to try and shift this like cultural view of like, oh, we can't, so we shouldn't, to like, actually we can do another path.
Yeah.
Like there is a path to prosperity. It just may not look like what you've been told. And it's this whole kind of like, I'm a big believer in living by first principles and actually really, and not living by analogy.
Okay.
So like, I think especially in the era of short form, catchy content, we can hear a message that aligns with our worldview and we can regurgitate it really well, but we don't know why, right?
Yeah.
Buy a property, get on the property ladder, but why? Like show me like from first principles why that's the right decision for you. And it might be, right? So I think like if we can kind of take away this whole shame of like not being on the property ladder and kind of simping to the older generation, being like, how do you give us ways to get onto the property ladder? It's like, move that aside. Like how can you have like sovereignty and like control over your future without actually taking on, 5 times or 10 times your like leverage, which like if you're an investor, it's very hard to get that much in like leverage. Like if I was to go and trade equities, for example, no broker's going to give me 10 times leverage, but we can to buy property.
Yeah.
So I think kind of getting away from this mindset of like, oh, we need to own property. And if we don't own property, we've somehow failed. There's plenty of countries in the world where you've got high percentage that rent, like Germany, for example, predominantly they rent.
Yes.
And finding other productive ways to build equity. And often the easiest way, or not the easiest way, the most impactful way is some sort of personal equity in a small and medium business, because you have the ability to impact it more directly than if you buy stocks or ETFs, right? Because in those investments, you are kind of to some degree kind of beholden to the cycle and where we're at in the cycle. Sometimes it's really great. Sometimes you might start investing at a really exciting time, but it was the wrong time. And then you have a drawdown and then you get scared. But the thing that people also don't realize is actually you don't get those, although in the last couple of years you have in New Zealand got a really significant drawdown, you don't get, like in your small to medium business, you don't get valued every day.
No.
You don't think about it. And the only reason we get valued every day in public equities is because they're liquid, which is a really great benefit. Being able to have like a bunch of equity in businesses that you can actually get out of every day is a huge benefit. And you pay for that benefit with the volatility of the price. And that price volatility is often who came to the market and who was willing to sell and who was willing to buy in that day. And I guess like it's educating people on those dynamics of like liquidity is a great benefit, but you have to pay for that liquidity with volatility.
Yes.
But you might have a property, it might not have been looked after very well. In certain circumstances, you can't sell it for 2.5 years. So, there's all these different benefits.
Yes.
And there are all these different ways in which you can accrue equity. And it's better to try and like build equity while taking on the least amount of liability possible, the least amount of debt.
Yep.
And often the least barrier to entry is like what you've done is you've started your own business with a low upfront cost and you have started to build cash flow. And then your next step is how do you leverage your cash flow to then invest into long-term assets or long-term equity, which could be reinvesting it into a second business that then has a more equity-based kind of outcome. Maybe you could sell it in the future, which would be great. Which would be ideal.
It's the dream.
That is the dream. So for a small to medium business owner that is scared shitless because they've tried a bunch of site building experts and agencies and marketing agencies and they never feel like they get the results. I feel like there's two sides to every one of those stories as well.
Yes.
How do they set themselves up for success if they want to work with someone like you or another provider of these services?
If the business is looking to grow on social media, I guess it comes down to how much time and money they've got. Usually they don't have a lot of either.
No.
Which is tricky.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of agencies who are in a similar position to me that now in New Zealand that work with small to medium-sized businesses who can give them that success. I still talk to a lot of business owners who are like, why should we use someone in New Zealand over outsourcing it overseas? Right. And my argument to that would be because people here in New Zealand typically know the culture a lot better.
Yeah.
And can know their audience that they're trying to market their business to a lot easier. But it all comes down to doing your research and asking the right questions. Have you worked with someone like my business before? Do you understand my market enough? And they might not. Maybe there's other results that they can see that like at the end of the day, can you get my business sales?
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses in my industry, they're on short-term contracts, 3 to 6 months. If you can have just enough money to put that aside and give it a go, that's fantastic.
What sort of time commitment is the right time commitment to really see success? Because I get that they're relatively short-term contracts, but probably 3 months is maybe too short.
3 months would be paid ads, like the minimum.
Right.
That gives someone like myself enough time to like really test and optimize.
And how many iterations would you go over in a 3-month process with a new client?
It depends on like what their business is, what the competition's doing, how much they're wanting to spend with me. Like if it's only, anywhere from like $10 to $50 a day, we're not going to be trying heaps.
Right.
Which is tricky. But if it's bigger budgets, obviously you can try more and do different things. But there's things in the toolbox that we can use to kind of get businesses on the right track with their ads. Like both Google and Meta have these websites where you can, I think it's called like the Facebook ads library.
Yep.
You can type in your competition and see what ads they're running. And see what graphics and what videos and the styles and things like that. And we'll be like, oh yeah, I'm watching the video and that really captivates me. Or you might watch it and be like, man, that was rubbish. I know I can do a better job.
Right.
And it's interesting when I am onboarding new clients, I will go and have a look at what the competitors are doing. And majority of the time it's, the bar's low, which is super exciting for these clients. Because, you don't have to create something that's world class to just be ahead of the competition. And that's the beauty of being a business in New Zealand is there is competition, but there's not heaps of it. For the most part, in some businesses we are competing against global competitors, but sometimes we're not. And that gives some businesses huge opportunities.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
No problem.